Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Wednesday, March 19th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, should the city of Fresno regulate smoke shops?
They're using a loophole in city government where they get to be classified as a retail shop. Retail shops are allowed to go anywhere in the city.
We will hear how a recent city vote turned out and what might be next. But first, these news headlines. There are new clues about what may have started a deadly wildfire earlier this year in Southern California. Power lines belonging to Southern California Edison showed signs of heavy stress 24 hours before the Eaton fire started. That's according to new reporting by the New York Times, which reviewed data from a company that maintains electrical sensors. The stress on the transmission network was present long before heavy winds hit the LA County area, according to the Times. The power lines were located in Altadena and Pasadena. The Eaton fire broke out in January and killed 17 people and destroyed more than 9,000 structures. There's a new contender for a state Senate seat opening up in 2026. Esmeralda Soria says she's running for Senate District 14. The Senate seat is up for grabs because the current Senator, Ana Caballero, will be termed out. Soria is currently in her second term in Assembly District 27. The 14th Senate District encompasses parts of Merced, Madera, and Fresno. Soria will run against fellow Democrat Nelson Esparza. The two served on the Fresno City Council together at one point. Madera County's only general hospital shut down more than 2 years ago. After a bankruptcy process and new ownership, the hospital finally reopened its doors on Tuesday. Tim Sheehan with our news partner, the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, reports.
Patients arriving at the newly reopened hospital will see a lot of the same services as before. Steve Stark is the hospital's new CEO.
We'll have the ability to admit patients on the floor. We'll have the ability to do surgeries. We will be able to admit in the ICU.
But there won't be services like labor and delivery. And Stark says the hospital is working on plans to reopen its clinics in Chowchilla, Mendota, and Madera. The hospital officially got its license on Monday. That's after a long inspection process by the state. Ana Caballero is a Democratic state senator who represents parts of Madera County. She says the hospital's closure was a wake-up call.
I believe that the community didn't realize the gem they had here until it was gone.
Now that it's back, officials hope it restores not just healthcare options for residents, but also peace of mind. With the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, I'm Tim Sheehan.
A police department in Merced County is mourning the death of one of its volunteers. The Gustine Police Department says a volunteer officer was killed Sunday after he was hit by an alleged drunk driver. It happened along Highway 99 near the city of Livingston. The volunteer officer was assisting a stranded motorcyclist on the side of the road. Both were struck by the driver. The department says the volunteer officer planned to take a job with the department after his volunteer work.
If public radio didn't already exist, we'd need to invent it. Do you really trust a billionaire to deliver your news? What about a hedge fund? Or AI with its hallucinations? Public radio is great because the listener comes first, not profit. Help keep the freely accessible information on KVPR, free with your donation today. Become a monthly member at kvpr.org/donate. And thanks.
And now to our main story. Last week, the Fresno City Council failed to pass an ordinance that would have cracked down on the number of smoke shops allowed in the city. The regulations would have increased penalties for violations and required more stringent permits. But those plans went up in smoke, at least for now. Fresno City Council members were evenly split, and an empty council seat caused an impasse. Current city code lets the shops operate with minimal supervision compared to, say, regulated cannabis retailers. And proponents of the regulations say the shops are magnets for illegal activity. That includes Miguel Arias, vice president of the Fresno City Council. He represents District 3, which includes the Tower District, Chinatown, and South Fresno, areas he says have become rife with smoke shops in recent years. Miguel came to the KVPR studios to discuss why he's concerned about smoke shops in Fresno and what his plans are moving forward. He starts us out by explaining what qualifies as a smoke shop versus another type of retailer.
Under the proposed rules that we discussed and debated this last week, the definition of a smoke shop would be an establishment that primarily sells the following products. It's vape pens, tobacco, and paraphernalia equipment like glass pipes.
Okay, so you've raised a lot of concerns about these smoke shops. Recently, this ordinance came up for consideration before the City Council, as you mentioned. Why is this an important issue for you?
I'll tell you, when I took office in 2019, I had 3 smoke shops in the district for about 75,000 residents. In 2021, that number grew to 47 smoke shops for the same amount of residents. And the vast majority of smoke shops in our experience through inspections of the Code Enforcement Department, Attorney General, and Police Department, the vast majority are the black market for illegal sales of cannabis, vape pens with marijuana to teens, as well as flavored tobacco to teens, which is illegal, in state law and local regulations.
To what do you attribute that proliferation of shops?
What we've noticed is when it comes to smoke shops, they're using a loophole in city government where they get to be classified as a retail shop. Retail shops are allowed to go anywhere in the city. They're very, very cheap to stand up. You just have to pay your $27 business permit for the year, and you can open up. Another retailer that sells tobacco, like convenience stores, gas stations, pharmacies, grocery stores, and warehouse stores, all fall under conditional use permit. That takes time and significant amount of resources to stand up. These retail shops are extremely cheap to operate and to open, and they've been able to pop up across the city in the number of hundreds of shops at a time where year over year for the last decade, tobacco consumption in the city of Fresno has decreased every single year. And what we've known for a while is, according to the FDA that regulates tobacco production, distribution, and retail, that these shops are not selling tobacco. That is not a product that is coming out of their shops in any level of inventory or size to justify their operations.
Okay, before we dive into what you're hoping to achieve with more laws for the smoke shops, tell us about sensitive areas. I know you've been specifically concerned about the location of these smoke shops being adjacent to what you're calling sensitive areas. So what are those? As
we've indicated, any establishment that sells a controlled substance meant for adults 18 over, whether it be alcohol or cannabis, is not allowed to be within 1,000 feet of a sensitive use area, which includes a park, a school, a daycare facility. Anywhere where kids would have to be continuously operating or within the area, we don't want these controlled substance or adult operators to be located. And the smoke shop ordinance included that provision for the first time for smoke shop operators, the vast majority of which are located near schools.
Interesting. So what specifically would that ordinance have done to regulate these shops other than where they can be located?
The ordinance would have applied the same rules that apply for convenience stores, liquor stores, and pharmacies that sell tobacco or alcohol. They would not be allowed under near parks and schools. They would have operating hours from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. They would be required to have a security plan and cameras. They would not allow minors into their establishment. And if they were caught engaging in egregious violation, which is defined as gambling, human trafficking, selling cannabis illegally, or THC and vape pens or flavored tobacco to minors, they would immediately have their license revoked.
3 council members voted against the ordinance, including Tyler Maxwell. Discussing the proposal last week at the council meeting, he called it, quote, heavy-handed. He said it was sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What's your answer to that critique that this proposed ordinance is too stringent?
Well, here's the fact is the 3 North Fresno council members voted against the ordinance. And the fact is the North Fresno council members have the least amount of smoke shops with the least amount of violations of them selling illegal products. And what was difficult about last week's discussion was that we recognize a couple of realities. One is the North Fresno Council members don't have as severe as a problem with the concentration of smoke shops and them engaging in illegal activity as we do south of Shaw. Secondly, the vast majority of these business owners live in their respective neighborhoods, but yet operate their legal operations in the southern part of the city. And lastly, as you know, we have one vacancy on the city council, which will be determined today in a special election. And I think the fourth councilman from South Fresno missing from that debate is a critical component of the failure of the policy to move forward. Because the fact is that those of us that have dozens and dozens of smoke shops that have become the epicenter of crime in the neighborhood and illegal sales to minors recognize the importance of having, it's not a heavy hand, it is the exact same rules that we apply to liquor stores, pharmacies, and convenience stores, because they're selling products designed and meant for adults.
So, and I'll mention we're speaking today, March 18th. So you mentioned that special election. Do you think you're going to try to bring this proposal back once you have a full council again?
I think the proposal is important enough for the southern part of the city and to protect the public health and safety of the youth of our city and neighborhoods to bring it back when we have a full council ready to debate the issue.
Now, would the proposal dramatically decrease the number of shops? Would it close any shops?
It would.
Okay.
We estimate that 2/3 of the shops would end up having to close based on the proximity to schools and parks.
So what would those shop owners do?
Those shops owners would have an opportunity. Any shop owner in the current proposed policy that did not have any history of violations of selling illegal products or products to minors would have an opportunity to relocate outside the 1,000-foot buffer from schools and parks and obtain a license and operate legally within the new rules that we would apply to them, which are exact same rules that we apply to liquor stores and convenience stores that sell alcohol and tobacco products, as well as legal cannabis.
And so, Councilmember Arias, with all that said, where do you go from here?
I'm looking forward to the election results during the special election for District 5 council member, a district that is also saturated and overwhelmed with the presence of smoke shops and the consequence of all the crime around those smoke shops and commercial corridors. And I'm hopeful that the new council member for District 5 will be more amenable to ensuring that smoke shops follow those same rules as every other business that sells a controlled substance meant for adults in our city and protects parks and schools from having to have these operators in their neighborhoods.
That was my conversation with Fresno City Council Vice President Miguel Arias. As he mentioned, there was a special election held last night to fill a vacant council seat in Fresno. As of the latest count from the Fresno County Registrar of Voters, Brandon Vang is leading with 50.5% of the vote for the District 5 seat. If Vang's total can stay above the 50% mark, he could win the seat outright. We will bring you the latest on the final results of that race in our local KVPR newscasts. You can catch those here or on our broadcasts. We also want to hear from you. If there's a controversial rule in your city that you think is worth explaining, drop us a line. Just email podcast@kvpr.org. And that does it for today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.